The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Second Breakfast podcast. I'm Andy Roth alongside Phil Duvall. Say hi, Phil.
Hi, Phil.
Well done. And
It's been a while. It's been a while since I was a complete idiot on this show.
but there's also it's also endearing, right? Because it's George Burns and Gracie Allen, right? So it's all good.
I'm sure most of the people on this show do not know that.
Say goodnight, Gracie. Goodnight, Gracie.
Hi, Gracie. Yeah. I think stupid but endearing is really something I aim for.
Honestly, that's my wheelhouse. So
Yeah. Right. Seriously. So, have you ever said something and someone was like pleasantly surprised by how clever you were, and you were like, "Wow, thanks."
Right.
We have a friend from college whose name I won't say on the air because I want to be polite. But his name is Jeremy Goldstein. And one time I said something, like a joke, and he was like, "Hey, that was actually funny." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Did you mean to say that?" And I was like, "Yes." He's like, "It was really clever." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is the worst compliment I've ever gotten in my life."
I find that my propensity to quote movies has actually made that more challenging and difficult because I'll say something that's really funny and people will be like,
"Where'd that come from? Where's that from?"
What's that from? What's it from? It's like, me.
My
right
head.
now.
I said it. No, that's a movie. I mean, no, I'm funny sometimes. I'm a funny person from time to time.
I won't put money on the fact that no one in the history of Hollywood screenwriting has ever combined those words in that way.
Right.
But it wasn't conscious.
You know, Ringo Starr used to try to write songs for the Beatles. He wrote 2 songs at the time he was at the Beatles, and he kept writing songs for the Beatles, and they'd be like, "Look, I've got this song," and then they'd be like, then he'd start to play it, and like they'd be like, "No, that's the song that was written 10 years ago." Like, "No, that's Gene Pitney. No, that's Roy Orbison." No, they'd go on like that. So finally, he's like, "I think I've got a song. Please tell me if no one's written it before." And like, they're like, Ringo, you wrote a song. And that's how it felt that day when Jeremy was like, "You made a joke that was good." And I was like, So anyways.
So basically you rose to the level of Ringo Starr from what, Pete Best, I guess?
Well, just like Ringo Starr. Here's the deal about Ringo Starr before we get into the movie. Very quickly, this will be very brief. There's Ringo Starr, the drummer, and there's Ringo Starr, the songwriter.
Indeed. Oh.
And really, nary the twain shall meet. These are not the same things at all.
It's true.
Ringo Starr, the drummer, is one of the most influential musicians in the history of rock music.
Yes.
And Ringo Starr, the songwriter,
is
not. No.
Indeed.
So Iron Man 3, Andy Roth.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Iron Man 3 today. It's so much to say about it. It is the return of Robert Downey Jr. into one of the roles that sort of completed his career renaissance and maybe even sparked it.
We haven't seen him play Iron Man since last May.
I know, right? It is the start of Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 2. Is
that something we're going to say more about in this, or are you just going to leave it at that?
Well, I won't say anything more about it now, but we'll talk about it.
Okay, because I think that is one of the, like, for some of our viewers, they'll be like, what is that? And I think it's an interesting idea.
Indeed. And it is, perhaps not most interesting, but certainly interesting to people like us. Written and directed by Shane Black. I was so excited by this that I watched the movie Predator last week because Shane Black was in it until he got killed by the Predator. Oh, spoiler.
Everybody gets killed by the Predator. That's not much of a spoiler.
It's true.
Except for one man.
Get to the chopper. So,
you are one ugly... Sorry, go ahead.
I'm waking
No, I know.
Yes. So, what the hell are you? Right? So, okay, there we go. So I've actually seen the movie twice. I saw it in 2D, regular small screen, 2D, small movie screen, 2D, normal movie screen.
The way movies are supposed to be watched, yes.
That's fair. As I have said on this podcast before, I don't need 3D, but I like seeing things in IMAX a lot. And if something is released in IMAX 3D, you very rarely see it in IMAX 2D, which means I get the 3D along with it. So I was going to see it in IMAX 3D, and then last week, you may recall, a series of events occurred that involved me wearing an eye patch. And I'm not going to go to a 3D movie wearing an eye patch. That's just not going to happen. So
disastrous.
But literally 24 hours later, my eye was good enough to, wear my glasses at least and not have an eye patch on, and so I went. And I actually enjoyed the movie. Well, let's start there. I mean, what did you think? I
had a blast. Sure. And I have to tell you that I went into this movie not anywhere nearly as excited as you. I really was nervous going into this.
Sure.
Shane Black wrote Lethal Weapon, which is a genre-defining action movie.
Yes.
I loved Last Boy Scout growing up. I liked Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I liked it. He's good. My problem with Shane, and I liked Long Kiss Goodnight. My concern with Shane Black is that he's super, super clever all the time, beginning to end, and I was really worried. Well, but he wasn't in Lethal Weapon. But his last movie, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, really was
over the top.
And I was really concerned that Iron Man was going to be more and more Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I didn't mean to do that at first, and then it just happened.
Yeah, sure.
More Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and not Lethal Weapon. It turned out I left the movie theater and texted Andy, Lethal Weapon 2013. I thought Iron Man 3 was a Lethal Weapon movie.
Sure.
Which is not actually a complaint. It is like a Shane Black, be careful, my friend. But Shane Black made a very entertaining movie that I was excited about the entire time and did not know how it was going to end. I mean, other than the fact that I knew that Iron Man was going to live because they needed to keep him alive forever and ever.
Right. We will be steering clear of major spoilers.
Yeah, we're not going to...
Having said that, Iron Man lives through the end of Iron Man 3 is not a major spoiler.
No.
I mean...
but we will not be sharing things like... no, I'm just kidding. We're not going to say anything about the movie.
Right.
Anyways... yeah, Shane Black did a really, really good job. I think it was. I thought it was not as dark as the second one. I mean, it almost fulfilled total trilogy expectations in the sense of like the second Iron Man was much darker than the first one. The third one was not as dark as the second, but I don't think it was as light as the first one either. I felt there was a good darkness to it. I felt like they had nods to earlier characters, which I was like, man, that's fine. But overall, I had a blast with the story. It was very tight storytelling. And I thought the bad guys were scary. Yep. Or at least, like, there was a point where I was like, no, seriously, how is he going to beat this villain?
Yes.
Like, how physically, and how is it, how? And there was a lot of the movie where that was the case, where I was like, how does he do this?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the interesting things about Iron Man is when he's in his suit, Iron Man seems unstoppable. And so creating like Shane Black is really, really good at making his heroes vulnerable.
What's interesting is I think he does that in two ways. One, he makes him vulnerable in the suit, and also he keeps him out of the suit for a surprising percentage of this movie.
Probably more than I was comfortable with, and that's okay.
Sure.
That's fine. I think he was... that sounds like a critique of the movie, but I actually think that, like, when I watch the movie, and I am going to see it again, I think that, like, Shane Black was he did it for a reason. Like, he was trying to get to... Like, that was part of the story he was trying to tell about Tony Stark.
I remember when they were is it Kevin Feige? Is that how you say his name?
I never know how to say his name.
Sure.
I'm going to look it up. Keep talking about it.
The Marvel Studios guy who's sort of shepherding the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He said what he and Shane Black, I don't remember if it was him or Shane Black, but it was about a conversation but it was about a conversation the two of them had. And what they said was they wanted to take Tony back to the cave. Meaning the cave that he was in at the beginning of Iron Man 1, where he sort of built the first suit and was at his quote-unquote lowest point. But the fact is that when he was in the cave, he wasn't Iron Man. he was Tony Stark, or at the very least, he didn't have the impregnable armor to fall back on. And I think they did that a really nice job of that. And again, I think they did it two ways. I think they provided him a villain, multiple villains that really didn't care if he had his suit on. They were going to go at him, and they were probably going to win. Yeah. He gets his hat handed to him more than he dominates in this movie, significantly so.
Yeah.
And they also keep him out of the suit. I have to say this, and I don't want to dwell on it, but the first time I saw it, I wasn't an enormous fan of the movie. I liked it, but I didn't love it. And it was because of all the things and I really liked Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Yeah. And I have really enjoyed pretty much everything of Shane Black's that I've seen. But I thought all the complaints or all the worries that you had were coming true for me. I thought it was too clever.
Interesting. And for me, they weren't. That's right. It wasn't an issue.
That's right. And maybe this is purely expectations talking, right? But I thought it was too clever by half. Mm-hmm. I thought the interlude with the kid was just insipid and ridiculous.
Oh, I had a blast with that.
And yet, I changed my mind on this upon second viewing. I don't know that it. I don't want to get into.
Why? Because it was much larger and in 3 dimensions.
Clearly,
you were like,
because
I was missing out on the nuances of the story between Tony Stark and the kid, because the kid wasn't popping out at me in ginormous.
Right. So here's what I realized, and see if this metaphor makes sense to you. Right. You texted me Lethal Weapon 2013.
Yeah.
Right? But it wasn't Lethal Weapon. It was Lethal Weapon 2.
It was both. I thought it was both. I hear what you're saying, though.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
Because
yeah, well, it ended in the exact same place Lethal Weapon 2 ended. Like literally, the climax of Lethal Weapon 2 and the climax of Iron Man 3 happen in the same place.
It's true.
The same exact place. Mm-hmm. Shane Black. During Christmas. Again, we get it. You like Christmas.
Right. It's a metaphor for all sorts of things. I get it.
But this is the thing is, what is it a metaphor for? For. What is the metaphor for? I don't, it's like a simile. But what is it, what is the purpose, in the words of Bronson Pinchot in Beverly Hills Cop, to what is this pertaining? Like, what is the pertinence of this metaphor for Christmas? I don't know. Let's hold off on that. And all I'll say is you've got the Christmas. You've got the ending at the docks, mm-hmm. the climax of the docks.
Yep.
And by the way, Tony Stark and Don Cheadle's character, whose name is Rhodey.
Yep.
Rhodey and Tony Stark are completely and utterly Riggs and Murtaugh in this movie.
True. It's true.
It's not even like kind of. They are Riggs and Murtaugh in this movie.
That is true.
Which is, again, this sounds kind of like I'm complaining. And I will say this. It worked for this movie. Shane Black, if you do it again, I'm going to get a little nervous. But it worked beautifully for this movie.
Yes, I agree with that.
And I don't have an actual problem with him doing it, because the story was fun. It was great. Their chemistry. This was for me, like. And I read something that said the exact opposite. I read a couple of reviews about this movie. I read the review by Wesley Morrison Grantland, who just didn't like the movie. And I just disagreed with his article. I just disagreed with his review completely. He was basically saying the interactions with them were meaningless. But I felt like this was the first time when you mentioned Lethal Weapon 2, as opposed to Lethal Weapon 1. For those who don't know, and you need to get your lives together, Lethal Weapon 1, the Riggs and Murtaugh don't really know each other yet, and they're trying to figure each other out. Lethal Weapon 2, by the middle and end of Lethal Weapon 2, they're connected.
Yeah.
And this is the first movie where I feel like Rhodes and Stark just have a relationship that makes, like, where they understand what kind of relationship they have with each other.
Yes.
That's certainly not the case in the first one. And then that's really not the case in the second one.
Yeah.
The relationship in the second one is really difficult.
It's true.
And then by the third one, it's just like they found their place
mm-hmm.
as friends.
I agree. I agree with
So
that.
yeah, what else did you notice about Lethal Weapon 2 from that movie? I know there was more. Oh, the ruining of a house on the cliffs
That's right.
of
Right.
Hollywood.
A
But it's
house on
Malibu instead of
stilts.
Hollywood Hills.
A house on stilts falls. Yes, it's crazy.
Like
It's
what?
crazy. Yeah. I do want to say this though. I do want to say this because if there was something about Shane Black being in charge of this movie that worried me from a directorial standpoint, it was the action sequences because he's known as a screenwriter more than a director. And it's not like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang had like a bunch of action set pieces.
Ah,
The action in this movie is spectacular. It is, even the first time I saw it, even in the peasant format of 2D.
God, you're so bourgeois. You know that?
It is, every single one is different. Every single one is inventive. Just the way, for example, you see this in the trailers. He is plunged into the water, and his house basically falls on top of him.
Yeah.
And the way he gets out is just absolutely ingenious. And it's so simple that I can't believe that something like it hasn't been done before in one of the other Iron Man movies, but it makes total sense. I dig it. And every single one, I mean, and I read the same review that you did by Wesley Morris. He makes the point, and it's like, oh, for crying out loud, when you have no idea where to put your climax, you put it on the docks. And I get that. Mm-hmm. But it felt new. It felt exciting. It felt...
It was great. There was not a moment where I felt like they gave a reason for it. It didn't really matter. The reason didn't matter.
Right.
But it was the whole time I was watching it, it was just so beautifully choreographed.
Right.
And actually, here's the cool thing about it. This is what I will say about it. Generally, when movies are filmed climaxes are filmed on the docks, it's all from down below, and all the bad guys are up high, or sort of like on the same level, you know, and this movie was from every level of the docks.
Yes.
It used the scenery, it used the space in a way that I feel like a lot of movies' action sequences don't. And I think you're 100% right. I think the action sequences were great. I mean, they were great.
Some of the best. Yes.
I like the idea of them showing Tony Stark, the person, physically training to become a better fighter, so that he can actually be something. This movie, okay, so here, let me break it down again. Spoiler free. Let me break it down here. What's the famous final line of the first Iron Man movie? I am Iron Man.
Yeah.
And the movie is about the audacity of a superhero to own his own superhero-ness. Mm-hmm. The second movie is about him being crushed by the weight of that reality, and about the sort of the deadliness of him choosing to live the way that he chooses to live. Okay, the third movie, and then Avengers goes into that too. There's that famous line. There's that line in Avengers when he's arguing with Captain America, when he's like, "I've got this thing. Like, I have a suit at all times. This thing is a part of me."
Right.
If you imagine I am Iron Man, and then that moment in Avengers with him saying, "This is a part of me. This is who I am. It's my suit." Those two things are basically the guiding principles. This movie is like an exercise, a meditation on trying to figure out what that means for Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And like, it is a movie where he is trying to figure out what it means to be Tony Stark as Iron Man, like figuring it out, not in an like the movie doesn't. I mean, other than the fact that he's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, which we could talk about as well. I don't think that's a big spoiler because you find out in the first 5 minutes.
It's true.
But
and in literally every trailer.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that, but yeah. It is literally he has PTSD from the Avengers movie, which is like he's like, oh my gosh, you know. Which again, and that reviewer was like, that's not. I don't buy into that. I'm like, why not? He's a human being, like. Right. But anyways, it's a fascinating like exercise. This idea of like, I almost feel like this trilogy is the Bizarro Nolan Dark Knight trilogy. Because, but they end very similarly, I think, ish. Sure. Similarly-ish. Don't try to take too much out of what I just said.
No. I'm with you. As far as it goes, I'm with you.
with the main character figuring out what it means to be him.
Agreed.
That's what I want to say about that. But I think that the way they get there and maybe the conclusions, and I don't know, I'm very interested to see what the next Iron Man incarnation will be like. That's the biggest thing I'll say about Iron Man 3. It left me wondering where we go from here and in a positive way.
Sure.
Like,
sure.
What do we do? What does this mean for us?
Yeah.
That was my thought.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. You know, I think I'm going to invoke one of the best comic book superhero movies of all time, Batman and Robin. Spoiler, it's maybe the worst movie ever made. Not just one of the worst superhero movies, one of the worst movies ever made. And Phil and I were Batman and Robin. Yes. So I
know.
Guys,
Go ahead.
Actually deserves more than that. One of the many problems that movie has is it's a Batman movie where Bruce Wayne barely appears.
Yep.
And you can say all you want about how The Dark Knight Rises was not as good as The Dark Knight and blah blah blah, and I'm really uninterested in getting into that right now. But something that I think it did absolutely perfectly was give us a lot of Bruce Wayne, because otherwise what are we watching? We're watching a video game that we're not playing ourselves, right? And so the fact that in Batman and Robin, George Clooney, who is a really good actor, is hiding behind the Batman mask for, not kidding, 85% of the movie.
And I think part of the problem, well, there's so many problems with that.
Right.
I mean, never mind. I was going to say a bunch of stuff about Joel Schumacher. It doesn't matter.
It's true.
It doesn't matter. The less said, the better.
Indeed. But I have seen complaints that there's too much Tony Stark and not enough Iron Man in this movie. I can't imagine someone wanting more Iron Man. You get so much action, but here's the deal.
Okay.
If you look at comic books, right? And I'd love to get Chris Robinson's take on this. Comic books have to have storylines. The storylines themselves don't go on for decades, but the characters do, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, you can't have the 8 billionth, okay, well, Tony can't do anything until he gets into a suit, and now he gets into a suit, and now he wins. Right? Like, this is our third Iron Man movie, plus we got the Avengers.
Yep.
And so I think
it's really it's our fourth time of seeing Tony Stark, and we know for a fact that we're going to see Iron Man again. Mm-hmm. We know that first of all, this movie has already had the second biggest opening in the history of films after the Avengers.
After the Avengers, right.
So there will be an Iron Man 4, but there will also be an Avengers 2 in 2 years.
Yes.
So assuming that Downey Jr. just stays in good shape and doesn't, just everything goes well for him, which I pray that it does. I love the man. Mm-hmm. Loved him back in the day.
Indeed, me too.
So, I'm going to claim hipster cred on Robert Downey Jr. I totally am. Cool. I'm going to unabashedly claim, like, when people talk about his comeback, like, now I'm like, that guy was great.
He's been here for years.
He is. He's like LL Cool J, only I should never compare him to LL Cool J. He deserves Actually, LL Cool J beat up a guy who broke into his house. You know about that. Mm-hmm. And Robert Downey Jr. once broke into someone's house while he was high. So I think,
Hey!
Robert Downey Jr. is amazing. And there's going to be more Iron Mans. And the idea, I was what Iron Mans. There's going to be, I was watching this movie thinking, wow, he sure is out of the suit for a lot more of this movie than I was hoping for. Mm-hmm. That being said, it was really well done, and I liked it, and I liked where it took me. Sure. So that's the thing about expectations, that this movie, the great thing about Shane Black, actually. Shane Black, basically, I think he did a really good job of managing our expectations. Recognizing that we had them, but doing what he was going to do anyway.
Yes.
And I know he's going to catch flack for all the things I made fun of him for doing the Shane Black things.
Right.
And rather than, but here's the thing. Shane Black, if you're listening to our show, which I know that you do religiously, I would love to talk to you about the different tropes that you use for your movies. Like this, I'd love to, like, rather than just tease you about it and be like, oh, another Christmas with Shane Black. I want to go, Shane Black, what's up with Christmas? Like, let's talk about it. I want to know what it is for you.
Yeah.
I want to know what it is about the docs. I want to know clearly your Tony Stark-Rhodes relationship was at least somewhat influenced by Riggs and Murtaugh.
Yes.
So instead of criticizing you for that, I just want to talk to you about it and go, so what's the deal with that?
Yeah.
Like, that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
So to me, it wasn't, none of this is an insult. I think I'm really interested in, like, what he's trying to do. And I think he's great. I thought it was, I can't wait to see it again now that the more we talk about it. I think, I just think that it's a worthy advancement. And the thing is, I think this is really, so let's tell people what Phase 2 is.
Okay.
What's Phase 2? Because I think this is the beginning of Phase 2.
Right. So
and I want to know if this is going to set the table.
We've got what's called the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it started with the first Iron Man.
Yes.
And then it continued with the reboot of the Hulk, called The Incredible Hulk, the one that starred Edward Norton.
Yep.
And it continued with Iron Man 2. And then Thor, and then Captain America, the First Avenger. And all of these movies, not so much necessarily the first Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, although at the end of Iron Man there was a post-credit scene that sort of teased, like, there's a bigger world now and the Avengers Initiative and stuff like that. But it was kind of a pipe dream at that point.
Right.
But after the Incredible Hulk, and when they were working on Iron Man 2, they decided to actually Marvel by this point was no longer, they were bringing back the rights to make movies of their characters back into the fold. They set up Marvel Studios, because you've got Fox who owns the Fantastic Four and has just butchered it. You've got Sony that owns Spider-Man and rebooted the series. Although I enjoyed The Amazing Spider-Man fine, mostly
they rebooted the series so that they could
so that they could hold on to the rights to the character,
which I find well, that's what they do. That's business.
It's what they do. They needed somebody, I won't say better to write that contract, but different to write that contract if you're Marvel. But so these movies, Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America, by the time they announced Thor, Captain America, and the Avengers. And what they were doing with the Marvel Cinematic Universe was what they do in comic books. All of these heroes have their own lines of comic books. They do their own thing. But when there's a serious threat, they come together as a team. But it isn't just like, and the difference I think this is valid. The difference between, say, DC and Marvel is DC, they're kind of like the aspirational heroes. Like these are the paragons of whatever they are trying to do. Superman is the golden boy, Wonder Woman is a princess, Green Lantern is a space cop, like and it's not that they don't have issues and problems, but Marvel, Peter Parker is a weirdly antisocial geek. Tony Stark is a genius billionaire who has an addictive personality. Captain America is a man out of his time. Like these are people with, I don't want to say more relatable issues, because I mean there's nothing. No, I get what you're right. These aren't real, but they're realistic. They're as realistic as they can be.
Right.
But the thing is, once they come together, they don't stay together forever, right? The Avengers, it's not that the Avengers breaks up, although that does sometimes happen. It's that they're not always needed in the same place at the same time, so they go about their lives. And so what Marvel has done is set up these phases. That's what they're calling it. And each phase, at least at this point, each phase is ending with another Avengers movie. So Phase 1 ended with the Avengers. Phase 2 will end with the Avengers 2. And So let's see. In Phase 2, we've got Iron Man 3. We've got Thor 2.
Coming out in August.
Coming out in August.
Just saw the preview for that.
Looks amazing. Looks amazing. Looks amazing. It looks amazing.
I don't want to. I'm going to.
I know.
I'm turning into a full-on geek, but when I saw Natalie Portman, first of all, when I saw Natalie Portman, period. Indeed. But then when I saw Natalie Portman, when Chris Hemsworth saw Natalie Portman and was like, "I told you I'd be back," I got goosebumps, dude.
Indeed.
I was like,
Indeed.
Goosebumps.
After Thor 2, The Dark World, Captain America 2, The Winter Soldier, coming out next year, and then the year following, 2015, is The Avengers 2. And we even have a couple of movies, or we have at least one movie that is, also in 2014, Guardians of the Galaxy, which is very weird, and we'll have another podcast on that. It's just
is that going to be technically part of Phase 2, or is it just something they're doing?
Is it Phase 2 or Phase 3, actually?
That's what I don't know. That's what I'm trying to say.
So
we'll talk about that later. Let's not get sidetracked.
The one Phase 3 movie that I know about is Ant-Man, which
Edgar Wright is doing.
Which Edgar Wright is doing, and that's really all we know about it. It's in Phase 2. It's in Phase 2 because it's being released August of next year.
So what we have going on, guys, is we have this idea of a studio
that is
treating
real quick. Sorry, just to clarify. Ant-Man is Phase 3. Guardians of the Galaxy is being released August next year. It's part of Phase 2. Sorry, continue.
So we'll see how that fits into the grander scheme. But you have a studio that owns all these different stories that is actively putting them out in a specific order so that they can feed into each other and then feed into a larger narrative. Nothing like this has been done before. Yeah. It's fascinating. Yeah. Doesn't mean it's going to work. It worked for Phase 1, but it accidentally worked. So what we see now with Iron Man 2, it did, in the sense that, like, at first they were just making these movies and they were like, I have an idea. But in Phase 2, Phase 2, they are clearly building towards something as they make it.
Yes.
And that's really interesting. Like, will it work? And they're going to have new directors for all the different people for the most part. Joss Whedon will probably do Avengers 2. But that being said, Shane Black is directing Iron Man for the first time. Jon Favreau has stepped aside. And he's just an exec producer and co-stars in the movie. He does just great to have him there. To me, having him in the movie was like a blessing.
Yes.
Like him saying, I bless this franchise. Indeed. You're fine, which is great.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
And then Thor's not being directed by Kenneth Branagh.
Right.
Which troubles me, but we'll see what happens. And then I don't know what's going on with Captain America. I don't know if it's the same director or not.
I don't think it's Joe Johnston again.
So here we go. So it's going to be really interesting to see if this movie, if they're able, what this looks like, and what they're trying to achieve. Can they? I don't want to say can they bottle lightning twice, because I don't think it's about that. But I'm wondering if this next chapter can be interesting. One thing that concerned me, because I'm a dork.
Okay.
Is the end, the after the last scene, the tag, whatever they call it?
Folks, whenever you see one of these Marvel movies, if you're leaving before the credits are over, shame on you. They have something at the end of every single one of these movies.
I have a new trick, which is that I leave to go to the bathroom during the credits.
Because they are 8 years long.
Because the credits are forever long.
It's true.
And then I come back and watch the tagline.
Totally fair.
So there's what they call a tag at the end of the credits, which is they show something that sort of like tease you into what's going on.
Right.
The end of this one was adorable, but didn't actually build into anything.
Right. It's funny that we've just spent
and I was like, why are we meandering?
It's funny that we've just spent so long talking about how like the Marvel Cinematic Universe fits together, because Iron Man 3, and maybe things will become clear later, it kind of seems not to. Right, it kind of just seems to be its own thing, and that's not a compliment or a criticism. It's just a thing.
Because here's the thing, right? Where would, like, if they have all these superheroes, and I can see why you'd say Hulk wouldn't show up because he's antisocial, and I can see why Thor wouldn't show up because he lives in a different world. But if the president's life is threatened, Captain America much? Like,
right? No, that's fair. That's fair.
What's he do? What's he doing? That's not protecting the president. And he's Captain America.
Right. It's interesting because it's clearly thematically. I mean, the entire movie is informed, as you said, because of the PTSD. The entire movie is informed by what happens to Tony Stark in the Avengers, and you have fun little lines, like one of the characters says that, as soon as you had something like a god from another dimension show up with a giant hammer, subtlety kind of went out the window.
Right.
And so there's kind of fun little winks and nods to the previous movies, but They could, but they could have shown you Iron Man 3 with only Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2. Like you would, and just like describing what happened in the Avengers, right? So I think that's interesting. I'm looking forward to Thor 2. In a vacuum, I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also looking forward to it. I think that's the thing.
Iron Man 3 in a vacuum is very good.
Yes.
Iron Man 3 is part of a larger thing.
We'll
interesting, and we will have to see. It's not a given that it's going to fit in, and that's interesting too. But we'll see. What a blast! What was your favorite? We gotta wrap up. But what was your favorite part? What was your favorite part? Or no, favorite thing. One favorite thing about the movie.
The action sequences with Tony Stark not in the complete suit.
I got it.
You know?
I do.
Because you get the character there, and you get some fun whiz bang stuff.
Yes.
And that's not to. And I mean, just real quick. Honorable mention goes to the relationship between him and Pepper, because Gwyneth Paltrow is so good.
That was my honorable mention as well. I was going to say that as my second thing, and that was not my first thing, but it was my second thing. And I want to add to this when Andy said earlier, guys, about like the action sequences are great. A lot of times people think that just means that they were really big and really loud.
Right. That's not.
But what we're talking about here is very simple, which is, when you're watching an action sequence, yes, is it exciting and physically like you can? But here's the big thing: can you understand what's happening?
Yes.
Can your eyes actually take in the action, make sense of it, and follow a storyline through the action itself, and not just through dialogue?
Yes.
And this movie, Shane Black has proven himself as an action director in this movie, because it does that beautifully. It tells stories through the action. And specifically scenes that Andy was talking about, action sequences where Tony Stark does not have the suit, they tell us about the character, and they move the story plot along, and you understand fundamentally what's happening.
Yeah.
They're really, really well done in that sense. My favorite thing, unquestionably, was Ben Kingsley. Ben Kingsley. Especially him talking like Anthony Hopkins in The Bounty.
That's right.
Andy and I do this show called Project Melway, as you all know, and we were talking about a movie called The Bounty with Mel Gibson and Anthony Hopkins as Captain Bligh, and they were subordinates, sir. They were subordinate. How to do the voice? Do the Anthony Hopkins voice.
They were. I don't remember any of the. They were subordinate. They were subordinate.
Insubordinate. They were insubordinate.
They were insubordinate. I forget his quotes, but
they were questioning me. But Ben Kingsley's voice is the same voice.
I think I mentioned this during that episode of Project Melway. Totally I was trying to like place it, because it's like, why does Anthony Hopkins sound so familiar in this movie? And it's because they had released the first Iron Man 3 trailer by that point.
Right.
And he's like, some call me a terrorist. I consider myself a teacher.
Yeah,
Lesson
that's exactly
number
right.
1.
Lesson number 1.
And
awesome.
it's like
fantastic.
It was amazing, and I honestly, it's to the point where I wouldn't be surprised if Ben Kingsley like used that as his inspiration
just for fun
for the voice. Yes,
his performance was, and again, I say this about some action movies, and it'll never happen, but his performance was Oscar worthy.
It's a special performance.
If they were going to give Kingsley a Best Supporting Actor, I think that would be legit for this, or at least a nod for it. But they won't.
Indeed.
But
I agree with that.
Anyways. All right.
Yeah.
Iron Man 3. I'll see it again. Andy's going to probably see it a third or fourth time in the theater.
I might. Okay. Especially since there's nothing coming out this weekend I want to see. So,
right.
Great Gatsby.
Why don't you stay home and read The Great Gatsby?
I don't have a copy with me.
Okay.
I'm not going to go pick up a copy of The Great Gatsby. It's not going to happen.
You're saying it so dismissively about one of the great novels in American history.
I love that novel. I've
never read it. I have a copy of it. I'm going to try to read it this week and then make the decision about whether I'm going to see the movie or not.
Fair.
I have hated every single Baz Luhrmann movie but one, and so I'm not sure why I would even consider seeing this movie. But I love. Oh wait, I know why. Leonardo DiCaprio, Mulligan, Tobey Maguire, and that other guy. That other
Joel
guy, what's his
Edgerton,
name?
Yes, Joel
Yeah,
Edgerton.
Joel Edgerton. And did I see Isla Fisher in the trailer as well?
I have
Or
no
just
idea.
someone who looked like her.
I literally don't
It's
know.
not fair. Not fair.
He gets a great cast, and
I
he
need Baz Luhrmann
directs them.
I need him to either start getting bad casts or start being a good director. He needs to
Indeed,
pick
one of
one
the
because
two.
I can't
One of
take
the
this
two.
anymore.
It's
driving
true.
me insane.
So that's it. Beginning of Phase 2, Marvel has kicked it off with a bang. Iron Man 3. And that'll do it for today's Second Breakfast. I'm Andy Roth alongside Phil Duvall. We'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.